What if everything you thought you knew about one of television's most beloved families was about to change forever? Sally Struthers, the woman who made us laugh and cry as Gloria Bunker on All in the Family, has finally decided to speak. After decades of silence, she's revealing truths about Rob Reiner that will shake you to your core. This isn't just another Hollywood story. This is about friendship, loyalty, and the price of fame. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see these television legends forever. The year was 1971, and television was about to be revolutionized. Two young actors walked onto a soundstage in Los Angeles, neither knowing they were about to become part of American history. Sally Struthers was 23 years old, fresh-faced and full of dreams. Rob Reiner was 24, the son of comedy legend Carl Reiner, trying to step out of his father's enormous shadow. They were cast as husband and wife on a show that would challenge every social norm America held dear. All in the Family wasn't just a sitcom. It was a cultural earthquake that shook the foundations of what television could be. Norman Lear had created something unprecedented. A show that would tackle racism, sexism, war, religion, and politics with unflinching honesty. At the center of this revolution were four characters who became more real to Americans than their own neighbors. Carol O'Connor's Archie Bunker became the face of working-class conservatism. Gene Stapleton's Edith was the heart that held everything together. And there, caught between the old world and the new, were Mike and Gloria Stivic, played by Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers. They weren't just actors playing roles. They became the voice of a generation demanding change. But what happened behind those cameras tells a different story than the one America saw every Saturday night. Sally and Rob developed a bond that went beyond the script, beyond the laughter, beyond the applause. They were two young people navigating the treacherous waters of instant fame, dealing with pressures that would have crushed lesser souls. Rob was fighting to prove he was more than just Carl Reiner's son. Sally was discovering that being beautiful and talented in Hollywood came with a price tag she hadn't anticipated. They leaned on each other in ways the public never saw. The show's success was staggering. Within months, All in the Family became the #1 program in America, a position it would hold for 5 consecutive years. Sally and Rob found themselves thrust into a spotlight so bright it was blinding. They did press tours together, attended award shows together, became ambassadors for a show that was changing America's conversation about itself. The chemistry between them on screen was undeniable. Gloria's exasperated love for her meathead husband felt real because, in many ways, it was. Sally and Rob had developed a shorthand, a way of communicating that transcended words. But fame is a jealous mistress, and success brings complications that youth cannot anticipate. Rob was married to Penny Marshall, the actress who would later direct some of Hollywood's biggest hits. Sally was navigating her own romantic relationships while dealing with the pressure of being one of television's most recognizable faces. The demands were relentless. 14-hour days on set, constant script changes as Norman Lear pushed boundaries, and the weight of representing social change to millions of Americans who saw Mike and Gloria as the future they either hoped for or feared. Then came the cracks. Small at first, barely noticeable to anyone outside their inner circle. Rob's ambitions were growing beyond acting. He wanted to direct, to produce, to create his own legacy separate from both his father and from All in the Family. Sally was discovering a passion for humanitarian work that would eventually define her life as much as her acting career. The paths that had run parallel were beginning to diverge. But they held on, kept performing, kept making America laugh and think and feel. The show ran for 9 seasons, an eternity in television years. By the time it ended in 1979, both Sally and Rob were different people than the youngsters who had first walked onto that soundstage. Rob left the show before its final season, ready to pursue his dreams behind the camera. Sally stayed until the end, then continued with the spin-off Archie Bunker's Place. The physical separation was the beginning of an emotional distance that would grow over the years. What happened next is where the story most people don't know begins. Rob Reiner exploded as a director. The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, Stand By Me, Misery, The American President. He became one of Hollywood's most successful filmmakers, a powerhouse who could greenlight projects with a phone call. Sally's career took a different trajectory. She continued acting, did extensive voice work, but became increasingly known for her humanitarian efforts, particularly her work with children's charities. Their lives moved in different orbits, connected only by the memories of what they'd shared. The entertainment industry is brutal in its selective memory. As Rob's star ascended, Sally found herself answering questions about All in the Family in every interview, while Rob was asked about his latest directorial triumph. There was an imbalance that neither of them had anticipated. In Hollywood, directing carries more prestige than acting, and producing carries more power than performing. Rob had climbed to the top of that hierarchy. Sally, despite her immense talent and her humanitarian work, was still Gloria from All in the Family to much of the public. Years turned into decades. They would see each other occasionally at industry events, at reunions, at memorial services for their former castmates. When Jean Stapleton passed away in 2013, they reunited to mourn the woman who had been like a mother to both of them. When Carol O'Connor died years earlier, they had stood together, remembering the man who had been the complicated father figure at the center of their television family. These moments of connection became increasingly rare and increasingly precious. But something was happening to Rob that few people outside his immediate circle knew about. The man who had seemed invincible, who had conquered Hollywood on his own terms, was facing battles that no amount of success could shield him from. Health issues that he kept private, struggles that he fought away from the cameras and the press. Rob Reiner had always been intensely private about his personal life, despite his public political activism and his prominent position in the industry. He built walls that even old friends found difficult to penetrate. Sally, living a quieter life focused on her charity work and selective acting roles, heard rumors. Hollywood is a small town despite its global influence, and whispers travel fast. She heard that Rob wasn't well, that he was struggling, that the invincible director who had given the world so many memorable films was facing his own mortality. At first, she didn't know what to do with this information. They hadn't been close for years. Would reaching out be welcomed, or would it be seen as intrusive? Would he want to hear from the woman who had played his wife in a lifetime that seemed so distant it might as well have been someone else's? The decision was made for her when she received a phone call. Not from Rob directly, but from someone close to him. The message was simple but profound. Rob wanted to see her. After all these years, after all the distance, after all the separate paths their lives had taken, he wanted to reconnect with the woman who had been beside him during those transformative years. Sally didn't hesitate. Whatever complicated feelings existed, whatever hurt or misunderstanding had accumulated over the decades, none of it mattered. Someone who had been family was reaching out, and family answers the call. Their reunion was private, away from cameras and reporters, away from the industry that had shaped both their lives. Sally walked into that room not knowing what to expect and found a Rob Reiner she both recognized and didn't recognize. The years had changed him physically, as they change us all, but there was something else. A vulnerability that the young, ambitious Meathead had never shown. A willingness to look back that the driven director had never had time for. They talked about everything and nothing. About the old days on set, about Norman Lear's genius and tyranny, about Carol's complexity and Jean's sweetness. But more importantly, they talked about what they hadn't talked about all those years ago. About the pressure they had both felt, about the competition that Hollywood breeds even among friends, about the choices they had made and the roads not taken. Rob opened up about his health struggles, about facing the reality that time is not infinite, that legacy is not measured only in box office receipts and awards on shelves. Sally shared her own journey, the fulfillment she had found in helping children, the peace that came from stepping away from the relentless pursuit of fame. What Sally discovered in those conversations was something that shocked her. Rob had carried guilt for decades. Guilt about the way his career had overshadowed hers, about opportunities he had been given that she hadn't, about the way Hollywood values directing over acting, men over women, power over performance. Sally had never blamed him for any of this. She had made her choices consciously, had found her own path to fulfillment and meaning. But Rob had internalized the inequity, had felt responsible for a system he didn't create but had certainly benefited from. This is where Sally's decision to break her silence becomes so important. She wants the world to know that Rob Reiner, the man behind the camera who gave us so many cinematic treasures, is also a man of deep conscience and deeper regret. Not regret about his success, but regret about a system that elevates some while diminishing others. Sally speaks now because she wants Rob's final chapter, whatever that may be, to be understood in full context. Not just as a director, not just as Carl Reiner's son, not just as the actor who played Meathead, but as a human being who grappled with the same demons we all face. The truth Sally is revealing isn't scandalous in the tabloid sense. There are no affairs to expose, no financial crimes to reveal, no buried secrets that will destroy reputations. The truth is far more profound and far more human. It's about two people who were thrown together by fate and circumstance, who helped each other through a transformative period in American culture, who then drifted apart as life pulled them in different directions, and who are now, at the end of all things, finding their way back to the connection that mattered most. Rob's final days, And here we must be clear that final doesn't necessarily mean imminent, but rather the closing chapter of a long and productive life are being spent in reflection. His looking back at the body of work he created, yes, but more importantly, his looking back at the relationships he forged and sometimes neglected. His reaching out to people who mattered, making amends where amends are needed, expressing gratitude where gratitude was never adequately expressed. Sally is part of this journey, and she considers it an honor to be included. What does this mean for fans of All in the Family, for people who grew up watching Mike and Gloria argue with Archie and support Edith? It means that the love you saw on screen had roots in something real. It means that the chemistry that made those episodes work was built on genuine affection and mutual respect. It means that even when life takes people apart, the bonds formed during crucial moments remain, dormant perhaps, but never truly broken. Sally and Rob are proving that it's never too late to reconnect, never too late to say the things that should have been said, never too late to acknowledge the role someone played in shaping who you became. Sally also wants people to understand the toll that fame takes, particularly the kind of fame that comes from being part of a cultural phenomenon. All in the Family wasn't just a show people watched. It was a show that defined an era, that sparked conversations at dinner tables across America, that made people examine their own prejudices and assumptions. Being part of that was an honor, but it was also a burden. The actors couldn't go anywhere without being recognized, couldn't separate their identities from their characters, couldn't make mistakes without those mistakes being magnified by public scrutiny. Rob handled this pressure by channeling it into ambition. He was going to be so successful, so important, so respected that he would transcend being Meathead. And he succeeded. His directorial career is a testament to talent, vision, and relentless drive. But success doesn't heal old wounds, and achievement doesn't fill emotional voids. Sally chose a different path, finding meaning in service and in using her fame as a platform for causes larger than herself. Neither path was right or wrong. They were simply different responses to the same overwhelming experience. Now, in these reflective years, both are finding that what mattered most wasn't the fame or the success or the acclaim. What mattered were the moments of genuine human connection, the times when they were just Sally and Rob, not Gloria and Meathead, not actress and director, just two people who understood each other because they had walked through fire together. This is the shocking truth Sally wants to share. Not shocking because it's salacious, but shocking because it's so simple and so profound. In the end, relationships matter more than credits, human connection matters more than career achievement, and it's never too late to honor the bonds that shaped us. Sally's voice breaks when she talks about the conversations she's having with Rob now. She wishes they hadn't waited so long, wishes they had stayed closer through the intervening years, wishes she had been braver about reaching out when she first heard he was struggling. But she's also grateful for this time, grateful that they're getting this chance to come full circle, grateful that the story of Mike and Gloria gets this final, real-life chapter. She wants fans to know that the people who brought them so much joy are getting their own resolution, their own moment of peace. The entertainment industry often treats actors as commodities, measuring their worth by box office receipts and Nielsen ratings. It forgets that these are human beings with inner lives, with struggles and triumphs that have nothing to do with their performances. Sally is pushing back against this commodification by insisting on Rob's full humanity. Yes, he's a director who made great films. Yes, he's an actor who was part of television history. But he's also a man who has loved and lost, who has succeeded and failed, who has hurt and healed, who is now facing whatever comes next with courage and with the support of people who have known him at his best and his worst. This story also speaks to everyone who has lost touch with people who once mattered deeply. How many of us are friends from our youth, people who knew us before life got complicated, people who saw us at our most vulnerable and our most authentic? How many of us have let those relationships fade because life got busy, because paths diverged, because reaching out felt awkward after so much time had passed? Sally and Rob's Reconnect Ion is a reminder that those bonds don't disappear. They wait, patient and persistent, ready to be rekindled when we find the courage to reach back across the years. Sally talks about looking through old photographs from the set of All in the Family, pictures she hadn't examined in decades. There she is, young and bright-eyed, standing next to Rob, both of them in costume, both of them on the verge of something extraordinary. She sees the innocence in those faces, the hope, the excitement. She sees two young people who had no idea what was coming, no concept of how that show would define them, no understanding of the complexity that fame would bring to their lives. She feels tenderness for those young people, and she feels gratitude for the journey they shared. Rob, in their recent conversations, has expressed similar sentiments. He's told Sally that his years on All in the Family, the years he was so eager to leave behind as he pursued his directing career, now feel like the most authentic period of his life. Not because the show was more important than his films, but because during those years, he was part of something collective, something that wasn't about his individual glory but about collaborative creation. He was learning, growing, making mistakes in relative safety because he was surrounded by people who cared about him. Sally was part of that safety net, part of that collaborative spirit. This realization, coming late in life, has profound implications. It suggests that our culture's emphasis on individual achievement, on breaking away and making your own mark, might cause us to undervalue the relationships and collaborations that actually sustain us. Rob Reiner became a great director, but is realizing now that being part of the All in the Family ensemble might have been when he was most fully alive, most connected, most himself. Sally has always known this. Her choice to prioritize humanitarian work and selective projects over relentless career ambition was rooted in an understanding that success without connection is hollow. The conversations between Sally and Rob have also touched on regret, that most human of emotions. Rob regrets that he didn't stay closer to the All in the Family, that he was so focused on proving himself that he didn't nurture the relationships that had given him his start. Sally regrets that she didn't push harder to maintain their friendship, that she let Hollywood's hierarchies and her own insecurities create distance. But they're also both clear that regret is only useful if it leads to action. That's why they're having these conversations now. That's why Sally is breaking her silence. They're refusing to let their story end with distance and disconnection. What makes this story particularly poignant for people in the 40 to 70 age range is that it speaks directly to the experiences of that generation. These are people who watched All in the Family when it originally aired, who remember the impact it had, who grew up alongside Mike and Gloria. They're now at an age where they're facing their own mortality, looking back at their own choices, wondering about their own relationships that faded. Sally and Rob's story offers both a warning and a hope. The warning is that life moves fast and relationships require active maintenance. The hope is that it's never too late to reach back, to reconnect, to say the things that need to be said. Sally is also speaking out because she wants to counter the narrative that aging in Hollywood is only about decline. Yes, Rob is facing health challenges. Yes, they're both in the later chapters of their lives. But this period is also bringing wisdom, perspective, and a clarity about what truly matters. They're not victims of aging. They're beneficiaries of the insight that comes from having lived full lives. Sally wants younger actors and actresses to know that there's life and meaning beyond the frantic pursuit of the next role, the next award, the next validation from an industry that's inherently fickle. The shocking truth that Sally is revealing is ultimately a truth about values. In a culture that worships youth, beauty, success, and individual achievement, she's insisting on the importance of loyalty, friendship, connection, and collective creation. She's saying that Rob Reiner's greatest legacy might not be his films, as excellent as they are, but the relationships he forged and the lives he touched. She's saying that her own greatest achievement isn't her performances, memorable as they are, but the work she's done to help vulnerable children and now the work she's doing to honor a friendship that has endured despite decades of distance. Rob's response to Sally's decision to speak publicly has been one of gratitude. He's told her that he's tired of the walls he built, tired of the privacy that became isolation, tired of letting Hollywood's version of his life be the only version that exists. He wants people to know that he's human, that he's struggled, that he's learned, that he's grown. He wants the people who loved All in the Family to know that the bonds formed during that show were real and that they're being honored now in the time that remains. This doesn't mean that everything is perfect or that all old wounds have healed completely. Sally is honest about the complexity of their relationship, about the ways they disappointed each other over the years, about the misunderstandings and missed opportunities. But she's also clear that love, real love of the deep friendship variety, doesn't require perfection. It requires showing up, being honest, and valuing the connection more than your ego. That's what she and Rob are doing now, and it's a masterclass in how to age with grace and authenticity. For viewers who invested emotionally in Mike and Gloria, this real-life epilogue is a gift. It tells us that the love we saw on screen had roots in genuine affection. It tells us that the actors we invited into our homes every week were worthy of that trust. It tells us that the values All in the Family promoted, values of growth and change and challenging prejudice, were embodied by the people who brought those messages to life. Sally and Rob weren't perfect, but they were sincere. They believed in what they were doing, and they affected each other as profoundly as they affected their audience. Sally also addresses the inevitable question about why she's speaking now. Why break decades of silence? Why reveal private conversations and personal struggles? Her answer is simple. Because silence serves no one. Because Rob's story deserves to be told with nuance and honesty. Because their friendship deserves to be acknowledged. Because fans who have supported them for decades deserve to know the truth. And because maybe, just maybe, their example will inspire someone else to reach out to a lost friend, to repair a damaged relationship, to value connection over pride. The entertainment media will undoubtedly try to sensationalize this story, to find scandal where there is only humanity, to create drama where there is only reconciliation. Sally is prepared for this. She knows how the game is played. But she's hoping that the core message will break through the noise. That message is about the enduring power of genuine human connection, about the importance of honoring the people who shaped us, about the wisdom that comes from facing mortality with honesty and courage. Rob's final days, whatever their duration, are being enriched by these reconnect irons. His reaching out to other people from his past as well, having conversations that matter, expressing gratitude to people who helped him along the way. Sally is just one part of this larger pattern of closing circles and honoring relationships. But she's an important part because of the unique bond they shared, because of the years they spent as television husband and wife, because of the ways they grew up together in the public eye. There's also a practical element to Sally's revelation. She wants people to support Rob's final projects, whatever those might be. She wants his legacy to be celebrated while he can still appreciate that celebration. Too often, Hollywood waits until someone dies to properly honor their contributions. Sally is refusing to participate in that pattern. She's insisting that Rob Reiner be celebrated now, while he can hear the applause, while he can know that his work mattered, while he can feel the love from people whose lives he touched. At the same time, Sally is using this platform to talk about her own work and her own legacy. She's been so focused on others, on the children she's helped through her charity work, on the causes she supported, that she's sometimes neglected her own story. She wants people to know that stepping away from the relentless pursuit of fame was a choice, not a failure. That finding fulfillment in service was intentional, not a consolation prize. That her life has been rich and meaningful in ways that have nothing to do with Hollywood's narrow definitions of success. The story of Sally Struthers and Rob Reiner is ultimately a love story, not romantic love but something perhaps more enduring. It's the love of two people who were family to each other during a crucial period, who drifted apart as life demanded different things from them, and who are finding their way back to each other as life comes full circle. It's a love story that acknowledges imperfection and distance but insists on the fundamental importance of the bond. It's a love story that offers hope to everyone who has ever wondered if a lost connection could be recovered. Sally's final message is one of urgency mixed with peace. Urgency because time is finite and opportunities to connect are precious. Peace because she knows now that the love was always there, waiting to be acknowledged and honored. She encourages everyone listening to think about their own lost connections, their own relationships that have faded. She asks, what would it cost you to reach out? What would it mean to say the things that need to be said before it's too late? What would it feel like to come full circle with someone who mattered deeply to you? So here is the shocking truth that Sally Struthers wants you to know about Rob Reiner's final days. He's not dying in scandal or regret. He's not isolated or bitter. He's surrounded by people who love him, reconnecting with relationships that matter, making peace with his past while celebrating his present. He's being honest about his struggles while maintaining his dignity. He's showing the same courage in facing life's final chapters that he showed in facing Hollywood's challenges. And Sally, the woman who played his wife all those years ago, is standing beside him again, not as Gloria to his meathead, but as friend to friend, human to human. This is not an ending, Sally insists. It's a continuation. It's proof that stories don't end when the cameras stop rolling, that relationships evolve but don't disappear, that love in its many forms persists. Mike and Gloria's story ended when All in the Family went off the air. But Sally and Rob's story continues, deeper and richer than any script Norman Lear could have written. That's the truth she's breaking her silence to tell. That's the message she hopes will resonate. That's the legacy she and Rob are creating together in these precious, honest, important final days.